So, Tony Margaritelli at the ICPA. I understand you do join several consultative groups with HMRC about the kinds of changes and things that are happening to your members, particularly agent online services. You've said you were at quite an interesting meeting recently and have a few revelations that may not have been more widely spread yet. Can you tell us a bit more about them?
Certainly. Literally, I think it was a week and a half ago, we was at our agent strategy group meeting, and we was going through the normal routine, and HMRC announced that literally out of the blue, no inkling that this was going to be coming, that IDA for organisations is now off the agenda, or as they put it, is a dead issue, which sort of took us all back by surprise. So
what are the practical implications of that decision?
The practical implications are that businesses will carry on using their gateway credentials. So where before each individual practice was having to form its own IDA, which would then link with the IDA of its clients, is not going to happen. It makes gross good sense, because organisational IDA was always going to be a nightmare to get sorted and get. The bigger the practice, you can imagine the problems that this would involve. The smaller practice possibly not, but the larger practice would be frankly a nightmare, and it is actually gross good sense to get rid of it. So that was the big announcement, and that's what's come out, that they're saying it is now finished, and IDA for organisations is off the agenda, and the gateway credentials will be sufficient to carry on.
Okay, I suspect, I know we talked to Steve Checkley at TaxCalc, and if it's some of the other software developers, they'll be punching the air with delight having heard that. So it does greatly simplify the kind of technical side of things, how you comply and run it. But are there any downsides to this decision?
Well, the downside, of course, is that at one time we was saying that if we're having organisational IDA linked in with individual IDA for your clients, that therefore when we're talking about money laundering, we would have no need to look into our clients, because there was no need. Their IDA had been established. But if we no longer have an organisational IDA, we will not have access to their individual IDA. Therefore, you'll still have to do your client due diligence that we thought at one time would be going. So the money laundering people who are, I suppose, if you like, who are selling their check-up for £2 a time, are probably dancing in the street.
Yeah, well, that's two sectors quite happy with this decision, but you're happy too?
Yep, we're happy with it. It makes gross good sense. It is a sensible step forward, and it's, to date, frankly, the first step, I think, coming from this Agile, which shows that they've looked at it, they've tested it, and it didn't function, and they've pulled it out. So that is a good thing.
Would you take it as any sign at all that the revenue, perhaps, we've had a lot of trouble getting any reaction at all out of the revenue, but do you take that as a sign maybe some of the developers and technical people are listening to the profession?
I think the developers, it's like everything, developers are always listening. People are listening. It's, do they actually hear? That's the big difference. They're listening, but do they actually hear? But this one, I think they did listen and they did hear, and when they tested, they must have realised it really was a non-starter. But always what concerns me, the only thing that concerns me on this issue, is that it must have been predominantly from the larger practices that would have found this a problem, not the smaller practices. And one wonders have they got more clout to bring the pressure to get that removed, as long as they're applying and thinking small practices as well and being fair with that going forward.